All right. Episode 45 of Exit Liquidity. We got on CMS or intern, previously CMS intern. How's it going?
Previously, yeah. Do well, do well. How are you guys?
Doing
Doing
good.
well. Thanks for coming on.
I
Yeah, for
really
sure. Thanks for
appreciate
having me.
it. Ali, did you actually ever watch his episode on Up Only?
No, I think
No.
I've seen maybe one crypto podcast, and it was like the post like FTX Fallout one on Up Only, where they had like Martin Shkreli and Do Kwon.
That one was
Um,
crazy.
that one was legendary. But besides that, I've never been a big podcast guy, despite doing 50 episodes. Despite doing 50 episodes of my own. How long ago was that?
The Do Kwon one?
No, the one with you.
That was summer of 2021. It was actually I wasn't even a guest. I was a co-host with
Really?
Crypto Cred and Don on vacation, so they were bringing on a few co-hosts to run it. Yeah, it feels like 5 years ago, but
Yeah.
2 years is a long time in this space.
Yeah.
for sure.
That'll lead us into like a bit more about your background, kind of how you got started in the space, how you got to the Up Only episode. What was that like?
Yeah. Yeah. So my first foray in was in like the middle of 2017. I was a freshman in college at the time. I studied physics, and there was this pretty crazy kid in my physics class who like just kept talking about random shit coins. And that kind of pulled me in. I was like, what on earth is this? Fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, round tripped a massive amount for me at the time. And at that point, it's like once you feel the euphoria and once you feel the despair, you kind of have like you're emotionally attached, which I think is part of the reason crypto is like, I don't know, people stick around and care about it so much. But yeah, so essentially like got in, followed, like learned a ton about Bitcoin, Ethereum specifically. Knew I wanted to work in the space at some point. So like was always just trying to find people who actually like worked in crypto in some form. Like kept that going through college. And then in my last year, I ended up talking to Dan at CMS. Talked to him on the phone it was literally a 2-minute conversation. And I was essentially like, I'll intern for you for free. I'm going to be doing a bunch of research anyways. If you can point me in a direction, I'll create it for you. He's like, yeah, no brainer. Let's do it. So I was lucky enough to get an internship at CMS in like towards the end of 2020. And then got hired on full time after that in like February of 2021.
So
Working
were
on
you
the
an
venture side.
intern when you started the intern account, or were you full
Yeah.
time by then? Okay,
Yeah,
so you had
I was an
started the
intern.
intern account at that point.
Yeah, so that was in January. Essentially, Dan is like a hilarious guy, but literally just like tweet whatever's on his mind. And kind of like not completely, but there were shades of like kind of a Barstool type of feeling to it. And like he was at CMS Holdings, and I was like, well, Barstool's got a bunch of characters. Like it'd be funny if there was like an intern like replying to Dan's tweets, and just I don't know, falling in line with the culture, showing some of what's going on at CMS. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a product of Dan just like being open to it, right? Like I felt comfortable enough where I was like literally as an intern was like, is this okay? He's like, yeah, run with it. Sounds great. And then yeah, that kind of sparked off the intern stuff on for crypto
Was
Twitter.
there like a
Started the whole
reply
intern
moment?
meta.
Yeah. Was there a reply moment where you're like, okay, this is gonna work? Like I'm finally in the weeds enough to where I know what's going on. Was there an interaction with anyone big on CT that kind of kickstarted the intern account?
So I would say no. I think it was like just a much more gradual type of process. It was just like funny from, I don't know, the content like Dan would put out this like Gigabrain like been in crypto forever type thesis, and I would reply with like a classic like intern, do you want a coffee or should I take notes on this? Um, I'd say like the two main things that kind of became like the staple of what I would put out were like notes, which obviously falls in line with being an intern, um, and memes. So at the time, CMS was like, we need to hire a full-time meme guy. Like memes are important in crypto. Like there's no getting around it. And I think they were ahead of the curve on that. Um, and I was the youngest guy at the firm by, I don't know, like there were a bunch of like 30, 30 to 35-year-old like professional traders. And then I, at the time, was like maybe 22. I was like, I'm the youngest guy. Like I should be the guy, the go-to guy for memes. So I had never really created anything before that. Yeah, fell into line, started making memes at that point, and like those would get a lot of traction. And then I would do notes for every up only podcast, and like Kobe and Ledger would retweet them sometimes, and that would be like a lot of traction. So I was like, all right, these are kind of the two main verticals. But yeah,
Cool. Yeah, that's CMS was that, or I guess is it like a hedge fund or like a venture fund? What's their like mandate?
yeah. So it's technically it's a prop shop, so it's just partner
Okay.
capital. It's about 50-50 split between like actively traded funds, like a hedge fund style, and then their venture investing arm. And I worked on the venture investing arm for my like almost 3 years, 2.5 years for CMS. Yeah.
Damn. Okay. I don't know how much of our podcasts you've seen, but we always like to like properly start off with an exit liquidity story. So given, your almost decade in crypto, what's been some of your favorite moments where you were exit liquidity?
That's a really good question. A lot of NFTs.
Yeah.
I would say NFTs by far. I think that there's like, I don't know, NFTs, a lot of the reason people get into them and just buy and never sell them. And I think it's a product of like when there's an NFT, you only have like a lot of time you just have one of them. And so you don't want to like sell because your exposure is either one or zero. Um, so I think a lot of the guys who like had a bunch of money would buy like five and then they could kind of unload it over time. Um, but everyone else, we would just buy one and kind of ride it up. And then, the guys who had a ton would dump. And you're just like, all right, well, I can't sell now. I'm down. So
Yeah.
you end up with a lot of guys with one NFT kind of holding the bag. I don't know. I don't think I regret a single NFT purchase though. Right? It kind of like you learn a lot from just seeing
Cost
how
of
the market works
tuition.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Expensive
Which
tuition, but
Yeah.
fun for sure.
which NFTs were your exit liquidity ones?
I was bit like Solana NFTs were really the biggest for me. So like DJ Apes was like the first one that I like really got into and loved. And then there were a bunch of others. Like I don't know if you guys were trading Solana NFTs in like August or September. But there were mints like every 3 days that would just completely sell out. And people were going crazy over them. I think it was the first time that a lot of people got onboarded to Solana because like there's just so much hype and excitement around them. I don't know. Solana, they're interesting. I don't know. I think Mad
Yeah.
Lads are like one of the coolest things that's going on in crypto right now. Like their community is just crazy strong. They're right at the forefront of the Solana thesis.
What do you think of the exchange?
I'm bullish, right? I think that it's like a lot of an exchange comes down to the team that's kind of building it and like their mindset around it. And like Tristan and Armani kind of leading from the front, they're just two guys that like I would always bet on. Armani and Tristan have both been like awesome supporters of us so far too. So we're like marrying the communities a little bit between Mana, Mad Lads. People have grabbed on to Nad Lads, which is I don't know, pretty humorous.
I like that.
But yeah, I like the exchange, right? We'll see. Exchanges have been a very polarizing topic in crypto for a long time. So
Yeah. I was just confused by it when I first heard. I don't know if that was, I mean, I'm guessing that was their plan from the start, but it just seemed weird to like do like a wallet, like the whole like XNFT kind of narrative they were getting after, building the community around Mad Lads, and then like exchange. It just seemed like a weird step to me.
Do you think it was planned? Did they like? Was it planned that far ahead? Like, was the whole purpose an exchange, or was there like a pivot at some point?
I don't think so. I wouldn't even call it a pivot. I think it's just an expansion, right? Like they're building like a suite of a ton of very cool things. Like their wallet's awesome if you use Backpack. They have their NFT community, which are like they're super loud and it's a lot of marketing for them. And exchange is just like another big step, right? Like FTX went down. They were like obviously outspoken pro Solana. And I think there's just like there was a void in the market and they were kind of like, a handful of smart people working really, really hard at a problem like tends to solve it sometimes. And they could be that team. So yeah, very, very excited for what they're doing. But yeah, I think it's like they're building like honestly like a Backpack universe. I think their brand is going to grow a lot over at least the next year.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same vein that I mean, Mad Lads has been like I think like over the past year, probably like the most profitable, like longer term thing I've been in. So like, it's hard not to like them when you have an NFT that 10x's against, I guess against USD. But it'll be like at the very least, it will be like a show to watch. I think we've never seen like these kind of steps being taken. I'm always curious to hear, because I used to be in VC as well. I'm always curious to hear why people decided to switch from like the venture space or the investment space over to like the protocol side. What was that like decision like for you?
For sure. Yeah, honestly, I never planned on it. Like my plan for the last 3 years was like this is like, I'm so lucky that this was the first real job I have. This is 10 out of 10. I never want to leave. Everything about the firm was just awesome. So like my plan was to stay in venture. I mean, over the course of those like 2.5 years, I probably saw like somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 different pitches in crypto. So like just by nature of like spending that much time, like trying to dissect different projects, and think about a thesis, like I don't know, you get a lens for it. And so when I initially heard the pitch for Monad, it was February of 2022. And Keone and James had Jeff just left Jump to basically start it. And I heard the pitch, and it's like it was one where I just have I did not have the technical chops at all to know if you could rebuild the EVM from scratch in C++ and Rust and get a 1000x increase in performance. It was just I had no idea if it could work. And I weighted at like a 10% chance in my head. And I was like, but if it can work, it's a massive deal. Like that's a main, like you get a lot of the pros of Solana and you open it up to the EVM community, which doesn't have a great path at like very high performance scaling. So I was like, there's a 10% chance this works, but on the off chance it does, it's incredibly important. Like that's the only thing that I actually bet my career on, after seeing like a ton of pitches on the venture side. And I told Keone that on the first call. I'm like, I don't know if this is possible at all. But if it is, please call me because I would love to be involved. So yeah, basically, and time went on, ended up reconnecting earlier this year and essentially had a conversation. Keone was like, hey, I remember what you said on the first call. Just wanted to let you know, like, we figured out one of like the hardest problem that we weren't sure how solvable it was. And he's like, it's solvable now. Now we just need to like put our heads down and like grind through the actual architecture and building it. I was like, all right, that's, you know, that's the vote of confidence I needed, right? If it just went from 10% to like, I don't know, like 60, 70% chance of like being able to do this, like that's worth it. And then, so it was not wanting to leave the venture side to go to the builder side. It was more, I think this is going to be like an incredibly important and incredibly powerful thing in crypto. And like, I just want to be able to help in any way that I can. So that was kind of like the reason for the transition.
Yeah, it's funny to think about. You've seen at CMS, you said you saw like 3,000 slide decks and nothing else, I guess, made you sort of want to join the team and start creating something with them other than Monad, which is, I guess, a really interesting vote of confidence. So you hear about Monad. What exactly are you like doing at Monad? What's your day to day like? What's the goal there?
Yeah, so I mainly wear two hats, both of them just tied to like growth in general. One is leading the ecosystem growth charge. So like very similar to kind of the VC side where you're talking to a lot of teams, you're figuring out which ones you think are very high potential. And then basically working with them to build on top of Monad and like grow the ecosystem, right? Like an L1 is basically just a computer for a community. It's like Ethereum is just a big, massive computer for Ethereum's community, which their community are users. And in that case, an L1 is really only as important as the apps that are building on top of it. So yeah, working a lot with individual teams that are building on Monad, getting ready to deploy on testnet. And then the other side is on the marketing and community front.
So did you
So we
start
have,
from scratch there, where like all the things that we see in the Monad community right now? Because I mean, there is a lot. It's insanely impressive what you guys are doing and like building a community. It's almost it like sits in a great middle ground between, I want to say, like Solana and Bearchain, in a weird way. I think it like
It's a good example.
like the chain isn't real yet. I feel like you've kind of absorbed that meme and you guys have made it your own in a way. And then with the TPS, it's just like we're super focused on speed, kind of Solana vibes.
yeah.
You started from scratch there. Where did the ideas come from? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. Yeah, it essentially started from scratch, right? They were looking for someone to really like spearhead the initiative.
So there was
I
no
think
like character, nothing.
no,
When you,
no,
oh,
yeah,
that's awesome, dude. Yeah,
yeah.
that's super impressive.
It.
That's super impressive.
I think it's one of those things that like you spend like a bunch of months building out the fundamentals and like what you know are going to be important, but just like there's not enough people to make it work yet. But like you just know that like this is going to be a big deal. People will care, and we need to have these kind of like systems and like things for the community to enjoy. So like a lot of months spent in just like building out the fundamentals, like having the correct energy, right? Like making sure you match your audience, which is very much crypto Twitter, at least at this stage. I think that's a place where a lot of protocols will kind of drop it, right? They'll tweet fun stuff off of their own account, and then like, well, this is a corporate account, so we need to like tweet as if we're like UPS or something. And I think they just miss like they don't understand that Twitter is just like one big attention economy. And you're not competing. It's not like commercials at the Super Bowl where like you get rated based on how entertaining your commercial is compared to the other commercials. Right? Like if people see your tweets from your main account, but they'd rather like go look at Kobe's tweets or like Crypto Cred or anyone, like you're just gonna fall away. Like no one's gonna care. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think that's happened in really like the last 10 years, where like creator content really kind of dominates what everyone pays attention to, and like brands fall to the side. So I think making sure that like you just mirror that, you are entertaining in your own branding, is like that's kind of the only way to actually grab attention, like in this kind of like big, you know, slush that is the algorithm.
Yeah, I just think like the certain aspects of your guys's marketing that are impressive to me are just like the taking the TPS meme. Like nobody, I feel like, even kind of dared and flex TPS like a few months ago, just because it was like kind of cringy. And like during the Alt L1 season, it was clear that like just naming TPS in a random number, like it was just it just didn't have the same vibe. And like nobody touched that kind of meta for a while. And then also, I've never seen anyone hype the release of their documentation like so well. Like there was, I mean, you can only do so much with docs in terms of like grabbing attention, but at least the CT I'm on had like at least a day, at least like a full day of like, oh, Monad's dropping their documentation. And like, I don't know, I thought that was awesome. I'm kind of interested to hear like, is that like planned out? Like what pieces are you putting together to make something like that happen?
Yeah. No, and I appreciate the kind words. I think it was like we were hoping it would become somewhat of a meme, where it's like it's literally documentation. Like most people are not going to go and read this. So like if you can take docs and make it feel exciting and have people excited about it, um, like that just fully comes from just like, I don't know, organic engagement and people just like liking the Monad brand. Um, but yeah, I think that, I mean, I think they're just like small things that we've just found work and kind of hit a vein over time. And like once one of them works and we know, we're like, oh, this is high potential. People really like this. The community enjoys it. Like, let's just stick with it and double down and make sure that we do it again. Um, I think we've just been building up like a number of those over time. So like one is this locked Telegram chat.
Yeah.
So there's 999 people
Hmm.
in the chat. There will only ever be 999 people in that chat. And every week we go and purge 25 people, usually the bottom performers, and add 25 new ones. And like
What's
over
the
it,
performance tracker like activity?
um,
Some vibes.
yeah, I won't like give it away, because I think once
Mm.
people know exactly what's measured, then you like lose. Right? It's
We're
like
gonna
one.
try and game it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you see someone tweet out, they're like, this is how we're doing points for this. Like, this is the exact formula. Then it's like, well, you just lost all organic stuff because people just care about the formula. Um, I think like there is no exact formula, which has been really good. It's like the measure that we try to get is like, is this person positive to have in the chat? And like a lot of the time, it's like in just talking, having a conversation, talking with other community members. Um, we do like a weekly mission. So like the one way to ensure that you won't get purged from the chat is if you participate in it. We try to keep them like fun and lighthearted. So over Thanksgiving, it was like share a pic of your Thanksgiving dinner. And if you're not in the US, right, just share a pic of some food on the day. And they were like,
But that's like 1,000 people in there. Is that just
yeah,
you behind the scenes, or like looking at everyone's
no,
account, or is it
there's
like
a
a
team.
solid
Yeah.
team? Okay.
Yeah. We have a team. We just hired Cryptunes full time, which is awesome. He's been like a staple in the community. But yeah, there's like, I'd say that there are probably 6 people who solely focus on making sure that the community aspect is as great as possible. And like I one really respect Keone, the CEO, for like deciding that this is a thing that's worth investing in. I
Did
think it's
you
really
did you
smart.
have to like pitch him on this, or was this
Uh,
like because
no,
signing 6, I'm assuming full time people for community is probably a big decision for like
Yeah.
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 So not everyone is full time. There are a few part time people. Um, But yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I agree that it's a lot of people focusing on it, but
I think it's
I
definitely
also
paid off though.
that yeah, exactly. And this is like what I'd say that the Monad community has been like at least like known and somewhat relevant for like a handful of months. Um, but it's been a long time kind of build it. Like the lock telegram for a long time, like people didn't even care or notice if they were purged, right? Like it probably was like 2 or 3 months of like purging people and putting stuff out that weren't really catching on. And then, as Monad's brand has kind of grown, people are like, wait, I don't want to get purged from the lock telegram. Like this is cool. Like Monad's cool and I'm an insider now. And I want to be part of it. And so I think like the demand to be in it, as well as people that are in like not wanting to leave, has been like a really powerful, and like people that don't really care, like they probably end up getting purged. So I don't know, you end up with just under 1,000 like Monad Spartans that are just like, we're diehard. Like we love this community, we love this chat. Um, we're gonna follow this to the end of days. I think like having 1,000 people that truly really care about what's going on is way more powerful than like some empty Discord with like 100,000 people just like sitting around for launch.
Is there a Mana Discord, or have you
There
guys just
is,
focused on Telegram? Okay,
yeah, there is. The Discord, the Discord's been actually an area that we wanted to double down on in the last few months. So like now
Because
the
you also
way
do
that,
poker too, right? Poker
yeah,
every week.
yeah,
Yeah.
poker every week on Thursdays. Absolute staple. I haven't missed a game in months. I think
Mhm.
that's my favorite community thing that we do.
Have you been
The
winning?
the onboarding for the Discord is really interesting. I joined it like last week. It's different from any. I don't know if you're in it, Cito, but it's not like usual like CAPTCHA verification. There's like a waiting room chat almost, and you have to like humanly prove that you are like not a bot just by like acting human like in the chat, and eventually you'll get approved and get access to the rest of the Discord, which is that's really interesting. I've
How
never
did you
seen anything like
attempt?
that before.
How did you attempt to
I
act
just like
human?
sent memes for a little while, and I just like I don't know, I just like talk shit basically, and I got in within like 20 minutes maybe.
That works.
It's cool. It's really cool. I liked it because it was like a lot of the times I wouldn't care in something like that, or I would just like, click the check reaction or whatever, and then don't send a single message in the Discord. But that way, I was like, I almost took it like personally when I saw that. I was like, how dare they not like let me in right away? Like now I have to like prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when it when you guys are coming up with that kind of stuff, like where do those ideas flow? Is there like an approval process? Like, can't imagine like, yeah, no captcha, we're just gonna make people wait and talk shit in this in this chat before we approve them. Like, is
yeah.
that just natural off the dome, or is it like strategic?
Um, I think it's like a combination. I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? Like we want to make sure that like your community being happy and caring about what's going on is like that's like everything, right? Like I said earlier, an L1 is literally a computer for a community. So like we're the devs, there are 20 people over there building out the L1. We need to focus on building out the community. It's been like for sure like a very serious, I guess not even serious, but like it's something that we just care about and we want to make sure it's as good as possible. So yeah, like the Discord waiting room, I think that there are like two things that come from it, right? One, you get like an actual filter. So you're not just like so many times I've joined a Discord, it's like, all right, click through 5 captchas, then you're in, and then you forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you lose maybe 50% of people that like don't really care to kind of prove that they're a human, like that's fine. If you can't send one meme, then like that's okay. You probably won't fit in well with the community in the first place. If you do though, like you might care more once you're in, right? Like you spent 20 minutes, you got added, now like you're in there and you take like a little bit of pride, you care. It's like you're truly part of it. But yeah, I think the like uh I think it's just over time, like brainstorming with a bunch of the guys that that we work with on like a daily basis, and having a handful of weekly calls, and just be like, community's really grabbing onto this. Let's run with it. This might be a high potential idea. Let's test it out. And like, if you test it out and it works, that's fantastic. If you test it out, it doesn't work, then kind of move on. But yeah, definitely like an important push that like is on purpose. Yeah.
And you touched on the character and the memes. What was the process there making the monad character? I think it's like, again, honestly, uh, you might be taking like 100% of these. It'd be really impressive if every one of these is your idea, but like, because I think it's kind of nuts. But like to make the mascot for Monad just like perfectly, like it's basically the same thing as a Pepe with some tweaks and some purple, but that allows anyone to make the meme for any previous Pepe template. And like,
Mhm.
I thought that was a pretty smart move. How did the creation of that like happen? And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think same with everything else. I think it's a combination of like a few of us putting our heads together and thinking through good ideas, and then just like grabbing on to what the community like naturally gravitates to. Like if like the 1,000 people in the chat are really excited about this one thing, like it's silly to not run with that, right? Like memes like catch a vein and then they become a staple. It's
was
just like
there a
kind of,
thought about maybe like another character?
yeah. So I think initially the kind of purple Pepe character, people have started calling him a prune, which I think is pretty funny. But it just like, I think it was a combination of, there are a lot of like templates of Pepe out there, and it's somewhat easy to change it to purple. And like just that one thing, like all of a sudden now it's Monad branded. Um, so I think it was like running with that idea that the community kind of created on their own. Um, and then like highly incentivize, like socially incentivizing very good art. So like we're blessed to have a number of like amazing artists in our community. Like shout out Skilly, Mario, Rachel. Like these people literally grind out like high quality art pieces for Monad like all day. It's that's been like the most impressive thing to me so far. And just
What's
like
the
how much.
reward like system that?
Yeah, so you get like in Discord, you can get knighted as like a Mon artist. So like it's a point of pride that people take, right? There are like, 10 to 15 Mon artists. And like if you're a Mon artist, people are gunning for your spot. Like other people are creating art trying to get into that rank. Um, but yeah, I think it's just like a lot of it. It's like if you put, you know, if there are 300 kids playing at recess and like they decide that they want to play football, like all of a sudden, everyone wants to be a great football player, right? Like that's just like they decided this is what they want to do. And like now that everyone likes this and wants to do it, like I want to be good. So it's really just been like, incentivized through like kind of status within the Monad community, which has been like cool to see. That's been like an emergent property that, again, you hope becomes something, but you got to wait and see what like the members who care about Monad and are posting every day, like what they like, and then once they like tell you that they like it and like this is awesome, you just do it with them, right? Like I am just one of the community members as well, right? Like I just post the stuff that I like. Um, and then yeah, the masses kind of decide what they want to run with.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really cool. It really feels like you guys like are in the process of, or have sort of like caught lightning in a bottle, almost like, in terms of marketing, well before anything is even out there, in terms of the actual L1 and the ecosystem. I'm interested to talk about that a little bit, how you're thinking about like what a like fully realized Monad ecosystem looks like, or like what it looks like from day one. Are there any like specific types of protocols or like any dApps in specific that you are particularly keen on getting them on Monad like from day one?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. So at a high level, I think DeFi is like that's like V0 kind of product market fit. Keone and James, like I said, came like their background. They're on the same high frequency trading team at Jump for 7 or 8 years, and then got moved over to Jump Crypto. James was one of the first people ever working on Pith, and Keone working on the trading side. And like after spending so much time in HFT and then seeing how crypto works, I think it was 9 months, and they're like, we can rebuild the EVM and you can have all of this type of trading activity on chain. It's just not possible right now. So like Mana was kind of born out of like the trading style that that sees like trillions of dollars of volume in normal assets, and crypto just can't really touch that. So like bridging the gap between centralized exchange trading execution and DeFi trading execution is kind of like the core mission, right? Like trading on Monad should be just much more efficient than trading on any other EVM environment. So because of that, like we've seen a lot of interest from DeFi focused teams. We think the backbone of our DeFi ecosystem will be a central limit order book, which like it's kind of impossible for any EVM environment right now. You really need very low fees and high throughput to have like market makers quoting like, you know, many times every single second and like still have it be profitable and worthwhile. So I think the central limit order book will kind of be like one of those 0 to 1 moments for a lot of people who trade on Ethereum, L2s, or other EVM environments. With that, right, you're going to get like high performance perp dexes. You're going to get borrow and lends that have much higher capital efficiency than you can have in any other EVM environment. It just like it, if you're building anything in DeFi, and then you can just, it's EVM compatible, so you can literally just go and deploy it on Monad, you're going to see a massive performance increase. So I think that's been like the first initiative, which is kind of like it's an obvious choice from the dev side. So we've seen a lot of interest in the ecosystem from DeFi. And then I think the step after that, which potentially is even more exciting, is kind of the consumer facing side. So in my opinion, I think like Solana's first surge where like a lot of users were actually going on and testing it out. Like I think that was the first time that you could have very high throughput, low transaction cost apps that need those characteristics in order to perform. So you saw like Step In or like any other consumer facing app that like if you have those characteristics, then you can build these really cool things. And a lot of the time that it ends up being consumer facing. So like, you know, sports betting is another one. Like sports betting, I don't know where you guys were for Thanksgiving, but it was like, I've never seen more people betting on football than this past Thanksgiving. And I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that on chain. There just hasn't been a great environment to allow it up until now, because if you have, you know, if Ethereum like doubles in price, and on-chain activity like 10x's because of that, you know, L2s at like, you know, even like $5 transaction fees on L2s. If I'm placing $10 parlays on sports, I'm not going to pay $5 to place the bet. So like those small transactions are kind of the first things that go once like chain congestion is a real thing. And if you're working full-time in crypto, like you have at least somewhat of a bullish opinion on like what the space does in general. And like consumer facing apps, like I think Friendtech was one that was like in SocialFi, consumer facing type of application. Like I think it caught a lot of wind because it was a novel idea. It was cool and people liked it and could test it out. So I think there's going to be a lot more experimentation on the consumer facing application side. And I think like if you're building an app, you're going to want it to be like sub 1 cent transaction cost for your user. there's just like no reason to build it where it costs $3 to do something in your app. So that's kind of like the other area that has been a main focus so far.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
want to
I
get
think.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I want to play devil's advocate a bit, just because I think it would be funny to hear your take on it.
For sure.
Why does it have to be EVM? Why couldn't all of this be solved with Solana?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, right? Like
In your opinion, I guess.
yeah, I think the answer is somewhat more on the left curve. It's like,
Perfect.
95% plus of devs that work in crypto build for the EVM, right? Like they know Solidity, that's how they build, etc. Even a higher, I want to say like 97%, but I have no idea after Solana's recent run. But the vast majority of TVL is also on the EVM. It's just such a common environment that like people have accepted as like, this is, if you're going to build in crypto, you learn to build in the EVM. And if you see like Solana is one of my favorite projects in crypto, for the record. Like I love Solana. Like the first time I used Solana, that was like a 0 to 1 moment for me where I was like, holy shit, like this is awesome. Like I don't have to spend $40. It's free and it's instant. I think just like if there's all of this excitement and all of these developers that know this language and how to build on it, giving them a scaling solution that is like where the UX is similar to Solana, just like unlocks a ton of potential of what can be done. Yeah, I think that's like the kind of the left curve easiest answer, right? Like EVM is the dominant, it's the dominant like environment for crypto right now. So like if you can, 10x, 100x the scale of what's possible with it, like that's a problem worth going after. But yeah,
So
it's
then
a good
what?
point, right? Like why not the SVM? Like it could be, right? It's also very important.
Yeah. So then what are the trade-offs going to be from, at least like within the first year? Like you mentioned, like if you're looking to deploy something on the EVM or on mainnet, just come do it at Monad and it'll have orders of magnitude more efficiency and speed. What's like the downside there?
There shouldn't be, right? Like it's fully EVM compatible. You don't have to do like you can take Uniswap, copy and paste it, and it'll in 30 seconds and it'll run on Monad.
On the left curve, since we're there right now, how does that work? Like how does that work? Is it like an evolution in the way some like code is written? Like there has to be, like, how do you take the EVM copy and paste but still get 10K 2PS?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not the best suited person to answer it, so I'll keep it on the left side of the curve just in case like Keone watches this and he's like, "You're talking about the wrong code." But yeah, essentially the EVM was like built in 2016, right? Like the release of Geth, and it has not been changed like in any significant way in like the last 7 coming up on 8 years. Reth is one that a lot of people at Paradigm are working on, which you might see some marginal improvements with. Like maybe I don't want to speak to what the improvements might be, but like it's it's a very similar thing, but it's slightly more efficient. So the Monad team rebuilt the EVM from scratch in Rust and C++. And when you do that, you can implement a lot of kind of core computer science optimizations, which have been like tried and proven over the last 20 plus years. So when you build in Rust and C++, you can introduce optimistic parallel execution, which is kind of like the headline optimization that a lot of people like for it to go fully left curve. Right now, the EVM is completely sequential. So you can think of like a mile long backup for everyone going through like one toll road on a highway. Parallel execution basically allows you to, now you have 30, right? So you can do 30 cars at a time instead of just one car at a time. I think that's the analogy most people grab onto and like I think people think that that's kind of the only core optimization that exists in Monad. There's really four. So you have parallel execution, you have separation of consensus and execution. So right now, Ethereum has all of consensus and execution in each of the blocks. Consensus takes up the majority of the block space. So, on average, like over 90% of the block space is spent on consensus, which means you have this small amount left for execution. So basically, what Mana does is split them. So you have consensus, which is everyone agrees that this is the list of transactions. And then you have another one that has execution, right? So if in Ethereum, 5% of the block space can be for execution, in Monad, you can have 100% of the block space on execution. So you get another order of magnitude there. And then we also have our own kind of custom high performance consensus mechanism, Monad BFT, which is a derivative of hot stuff. And then also our own custom backend state database. So yeah, those are like the four key optimizations that allow you to get much more scale and maintain EVM compatibility.
How is, I think it was either the first or the second one you mentioned, separating consensus and execution. Is that not what L2s do as well, except they're moving execution to a separate layer and rolling up the data?
Yeah, so that might be where we get into the point where Keone might yell at me if he hears my answer to it. To a certain extent, yeah. That aims to solve a similar problem.
So immediately, like, I feel like the crypto mind goes from like, okay, is it fast? But the immediate rebuttal is going to be like, what's the decentralization that happens there? Is that something you guys think about? Is that like a core ethos at Monad?
Yeah.
Or you're just like, let's go fast?
No, absolutely. I think that's like, again, it's like people kind of think about, well, you have Ethereum and this has low hardware specs and is like max decentralized. And then you have Solana, which has higher hardware specs, but if you beef up the computer, you can send a lot more through. And that has kind of like, that's become kind of the decentralization metric that people look at, is like, how expensive is the hardware? I would say I have a skinny screen to work with here, but like if like Ethereum is here and Solana is here, Monad is kind of like here. Like it's very similar to Ethereum, which is like extremely important, right? Like the mission of Monad is to be able to create, like, help decentralize state access and kind of like make a scalable blockchain that does not have the decentralization trade-off. It's slightly more intensive than an Ethereum node. I believe that most of the specs are about 2x that of Ethereum, but still like completely. Our CTO likes to say you could run it on a Costco computer. Like Costco sells these computers which hit all of the specs that are required to run a validator for Monad.
Will there be high capital requirements like there are on Ethereum?
In terms of like the amount of like ETH you need staked, for example?
Yeah. If you want to run your own validator.
Yep. It's a good question. Again, our DevRel guy is probably the best guy to answer it. I think a stat that people kind of grab onto and makes sense for them is like a lot of chains that use Tendermint consensus have a cap of 150 validators. And like, that's kind of the main validator set. And in order to get into that 150, you need to have X amount of capital. Initially, Mana was considering using Tendermint consensus and ended up creating our own custom consensus mechanism to make sure that was not a cap. So any amount of validators will be able to participate in, similar to Ethereum and Solana. But yeah, in terms of the actual stake cap that you need, yeah, I guess I'll
Yeah.
I'll ping
Yeah,
our
we can
DevRel
skip
guy and
that.
see if I can get you an
Yeah.
answer for it.
That's
Uh,
cool.
for like the relationship between Monad and the EVM, from like a bridge level to an app level to kind of like just simplicity level, how do you guys see that relationship like being? Do we
In
just gonna
terms
see
just in
like a
terms of
bunch
bridging.
of are we gonna see like a bunch of Uniswaps, or is there gonna be like a killer custom app that's only on Monad
Yep.
initially? Like, how do you feel? I mean, I'm sure like you're going from seeing a bunch of slide decks at CMS to seeing a bunch more slide decks now.
Yeah.
Has there been like, this is only for Monad and this is going to be amazing, or has there been like just a bunch of like
Yeah.
forks?
Yeah, there are a few on the consumer facing side that I'm very excited about. We actually have an initiative launching at the turn of the new year, basically focused on these apps. But when it comes out, I'll ping you guys and we can add an update or something. I think the main one that's going to make a big difference and like everyone will kind of realize it's a big deal is the central limit order book. Um, it it really should be like the first killer app that only exists on Monad. Um, and you basically like in order to get access to it, like you'll come onto Monad, use that app, and get much better execution on a lot of the things that you're currently looking at. Um, but yeah,
Do you have
I would say like
any
the
names,
easy.
any
Sorry.
slide deck names that you've
Any
seen?
any hints? Doesn't have to be
Yeah,
names either. Just ideas.
yeah. We will probably release the teams that are working on it in the coming months.
Is there a
So
number? How many? How many slide decks have you seen so far?
I mean, there's kind of a line, right? Like, how many do you want to include in it, right? Like, if it's one guy and we don't believe that, that's going to be like that he's going to be able to follow through and execute on this promise, probably not including it. I would say that currently somewhere between 3 to 5, like super star-studded teams, working on that problem. Because I mean, like, if you believe that Monad will be like an important aspect of crypto, and one of the like the first killer app on it should be the central limit order book, then that's an awesome spot to be in the ecosystem, right? Like you kind of become a main character. So I think it's something that like we want to make sure an amazing team is the one that is like working on that day in and day out. But yeah, I'd say that I mean there are a lot. I was actually surprised at like the quality of teams that have reached out and like shown proof of concept. Like a few of them were working on essential order book for EVM even before they heard about Monad, and we're like trying to overcome the barriers that exist in like all current EVM environments, through like very smart kind of engineering methods. But they're like, if you're building Monad, that solves all of our problems, right? Like we can build this the way that it should be built without the trade-offs. So yeah, I'm really excited about the development going on there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, even 3 to 5 like rock star teams at this stage is, to me, that sounds like a lot. Like, especially with none of it being public yet. Is there any information you can give us in terms of timeline, like when we might be able to expect to see certain announcements, maybe like around when testnet's planned for, stuff like that?
Yep. Yeah, so kind of a level of publicity that they are like allowed to talk. So this is probably a public facing podcast is probably I should be the most conservative. The first working version of Monad, right, where kind of like you hit Frankenstein with the shock and like he's alive for the first time and transactions are processing and like the MVP is alive, will be very, very soon, which we're excited about. You kind of go through an iteration then from like the first working version to then what you consider completely debugged to the point that like public testnet is ready and available. And you basically just like build up the amount of optimizations you're putting into it. etc., until you hit like mainnet ready stage. So yeah, I would say that there's like, from the initial first working version, you probably won't have a monad mainnet for about 6 months. Public testnet sooner than that for sure. But yeah, it's tough to put like, I think about things a lot in terms of timelines, and like from working with like super high quality devs full time over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. I realized that they think less in terms of like timelines, in terms of days, right? It's more like, this problem could take 1 hour or 10 days, and I will know when I know. So yeah, we kind of have like internally an optimistic timeline and a conservative timeline that we're looking at. But yeah, next year for sure, you will be able to use a monad mainnet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
For the people listening, I'm gonna make an educated guess or an educated observation and just see your reaction. But I will say no projects or protocols are gonna launch anything significant
There's
within
just camera off.
within the holiday season. So take that with the grain of salt. Take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'm gonna guess like February, testnet, right? Right before
His eyebrow twitched.
spring.
I saw it.
You're trying to stay as still as possible. No, I think it's going to be interesting to see. We're coming up on time. I wanted to ask a completely random question, but I'd regret not asking. The moment I heard about Monad, someone had sent it to me and said, Kobe's on the cap table. This is going to go crazy. Like, that was the first message I ever got about Monad. Is he involved at all? Like, are you getting like a text messages from Kobe like good morning and what are you doing today? I'm on that. I feel like if he'd be involved, it'd be in the like community aspect, like a lot. I think.
Yeah. So yeah, he is on the cap table. That's in. We have our raise announcement from like February of this year. So yeah, Kobe's publicly named as investor. He has sent a handful of Gamonads in the community chat over the last few days. Has started using the stickers. Yeah, I mean, he's got some of the best judgment in all of crypto, right? Like, the reason people know about him isn't like some mistake, right? Like, he's been in the space for a super long time, has awesome intuition about a lot of things, and has been like super helpful in, a lot of questions that I've had. He's just had great perspective on it. So yeah,
Has he mentioned up only at all?
I have no insight into if when up only is coming back. I know Ledger put out a tweet saying if they raise $1 million, they'll do one show. I don't know. We'll see what that dynamic looks like. I hope it comes back. That was like my favorite crypto podcast by far.
Yeah.
The dynamic.
Your second favorite now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I do have to hop here, but
yeah,
for sure.
That's
cool. Any other questions? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're all good at least on my end. I'm all good. Really appreciate you taking the time. This was a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to Monad, as we were before, but more so now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, man. That's episode 45. We'll see you guys.
Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Peace.